Hello YouTube! Scott here with another instant review of Marvel's Hawkeye. Now this time we're looking at episode 3 entitled Echoes. And I'm gonna try as much as I can to do a review before I get to spoilers, but they will probably overlap, so go ahead and bear with me, okay? Now as a general overview, honestly I did like this episode, but it must be for some little things because I do have some criticisms. It did kind of seem to fly by and was a little bit light on story. This might have been because of a massive car chase that took up most of the middle of it. The performances are great. I mean, we're seeing the bond between Clint and Kate continue to grow. She's really helpful to him in a couple of cases, which is nice. The whole thing starts off with developing Echo's backstory, which is good to know. I'm going to speak more on that in a minute, but yes, some of it was pretty obvious padding. There were multiple slow motion scenes and multiple shots of Hawkeye falling backwards in slow motion and firing a life-saving arrow. Once in a movie is okay, I think, but twice on a TV show? Maybe not so much, But there is one thing I can say about this episode. It shows excellent representation for the differently abled. That's actually where I'm going to start my review. Like I said, the episode starts looking into Echo's backstory. It actually begins when she's a little girl. She's talking to her dad, and we see this kind of interesting parallel between her dad and Kate's, because they both seem like good guys, and they obviously really love their daughters. But they both seem to be having issues, because, in the first episode, Kate's mom was worried that his dad was going to somehow lose the penthouse, and Echo's dad, who I believe is a gang member, she signs to him because, she's deaf. There's a lot of ASL in this. She signs to him about whether or not she's going to be able to go to a special school for the deaf, and he can't really afford it. And he's telling her that she's going to have to straddle two worlds, presumably the hearing and the non-hearing. And it's really, he obviously loves his daughter. It's a really beautiful scene. And then we get multiple shots of her fighting. Not getting in fights, she's competing. The first one's this martial arts tournament where, he has to go, but he says Uncle will take her home afterwards, and reminds her that when it comes to karate, it's about speed, not size. And then her uncle, who we never see, and I'm pretty sure it's Jack, comes by and just holds her chin, because you only see him from, here down, not even his face. But in these competitions, you get multiple shots of her opponents, realizing she's deaf, seeing that she has a prosthetic right leg, and underestimating her as a fighter as a result. And that's beautiful. I mean, it's, saying the differently abled, yeah, they're out there, yeah, you go ahead and underestimate them. They will take you out. But then we get to what seems to be the heart of the matter. When Echo is an adult, Ronin, Hawkeye as Ronin, gets into the garage where her dad's gang is apparently holed up and kills them all. And there's this death scene, because she walks in, she sees her dad, and he's dying. And they communicate entirely in sign language, and it's just sad and beautiful at the same time. And then, of course, we cut to the present where it seems like she's going to get her revenge. Because somehow, everybody seems to know that Hawkeye knows Ronin, but not that he is Ronin, which I don't get. But that's when Echo makes her appearance. She notices Clint has a hearing aid, and she signs at him. But he points out that he doesn't really know a lot of sign language because he's just hard of hearing. And she suggests that maybe he should go without it, and things might be easier for him in the long run. All of this is being said to him by her right-hand man, Kazi, because, well, she only signs, and in case nobody knows what's going on, he's translating for her. Now, this is the part where the plot kind of picks up. Echo has, Kate in a headlock trying to figure out what she knows about Ronin. Kazi pulls her off of her, and while they're arguing, Clint manages to get free. And then there's just a chase through this building, which, as it turns out, is abandoned KB Toys. Clint manages to get a hold of his bow and arrows. He's taking down members of the Mafia one by one. He's fighting off Echo with it. He sets Kate free. They get out of the building, and she wants to take this 72 Challenger that's outside, which would have been awesome to have a chase in, but Clint didn't want to bust the windows out because it's a 72 Challenger. So they choose this older car, and they're making their escape, and the Tracksuit Mafia and Echo are coming after them. One of the funniest parts is that the Mafia apparently owns a moving company called Trust a Bro, which is hilarious because they constantly call everybody bro. And if you needed to be reminded anymore that this is taking place during Christmas, the first part of this car chase takes place to the tune of Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies from the Nutcracker Suite. And there's a bit where Kate and Clint are driving backwards through a Christmas tree lot. They run over a wacky-waving, arm-filling inflatable Santa, which survives, thank goodness. And they realize they've run out of regular arrows, and it's up to Kate to start shooting the trick arrows, which she absolutely loves. Now, most of this is just Clint yelling at Kate what to do and not understanding when she says anything back, because during the fight with Echo, she knocked the hearing aid out of his ear and broke it. And that's another running theme in the episode. You get a lot of shots from the hard of hearing person's point of view of watching the other person talk but only seeing their lips move. Really hammering it home that, we have people here who are hard of hearing. Now, eventually this chase ends on a bridge, thanks to trick arrows. There's this one really brilliant one where Clint has Kate fire an arrow almost straight up in the air. And his last arrow that he has is a Pimtech arrow. So when Kate's arrow is coming down, Clint shoots that arrow at it, and it grows into a giant arrow that takes out the Trust a Pro moving truck. Seriously, that's just so funny. And they manage to bluff their way into an escape, and you get one of those falling backwards shooting the life-saving arrow shots, yeah. There's a little bit of humor on the subway train they wound up on because Kate's talking and totally forgets that Clint can't hear. So they're both having separate conversations with each other that manage to intersect, because she's worried about the dog at first, and he's like, no, you are one of the world's greatest archers. And then she's like, really? And he's like, you should really take care of the dog, though. By the way, that dog still seems to be named Pizza Dog, and I'm running with it, because that's just a great name. So after the chase, they're back at Kate's apartment. Kate comes in from walking the dog and sees that Clint is actually on the phone. He thinks he's talking to his wife because I guess it's her number, but it turns out that it's his youngest son. And Kate comes in and writes down everything that he's saying so that Clint can, keep up the conversation without anybody realizing what's going on over there. And he has to tell his son that, he's not going to be home for Christmas movie night. Hopefully he'll make it for the whole ugly sweater party. And I don't know if his son actually says this, but Kate writes down, he says it's okay if you can't be home for Christmas. And it's this really sad scene. And, you realize Hawkeye, yeah, he's differently abled, yeah, he's a badass, but he's got the same problems the rest of us have. And, at the moment, he literally can't communicate with his son. So the next thing they do is go to get his hearing aid repaired. They cut from that to a scene in a diner where Kate's talking about improving on Hawkeye's branding, because apparently, even in the MCU, he's the least popular Avenger. She sketches out a costume that's really close to the one that he wears in the comics, and he absolutely shoots it down. He says nobody should be, thinking of him as a hero, and Kate tells him that they absolutely should be, because just the events of this show. And she comes up with the idea of sneaking into her mother's penthouse and accessing the files of her security company. And along the way, Clint says she should rename the dog, but I think you should stick with Pizza Dog. And right around this same time, Echo and the Tracksuit Mafia are clearing out of the KB Toys. And Kazi has this conversation with her that is entirely in ASL, which is good for privacy because, as he puts it, none of the idiots that they work with have learned it in the past 24 hours. And he tells her that they should be keeping a low profile because Uncle won't be happy. But of course, she reminds him who's in charge and tells him that they need to get some info on Clint Barton. So Clint, Kate, and Pizza Dog sneak into Kate's mom's penthouse. And I put it in air quotes because, it's her mom's penthouse. You'd think she'd have a key, right? What's the sneaking? They access the security files because apparently that would be easier than doing it at the company itself, which is a massive security flaw. And Clint gets Kate to look up information on Kazi first. And it turns out he's an employee at a place called Sloan Limited, which seems kind of familiar to Clint. And he goes looking around while Kate decides to look up information on Jack. And oddly, it's more heavily protected. And not only that, as Clint's walking around, he winds up at sword point, and Jack's not holding the handle of the sword, which I'm sure will be explained away at the beginning of the first or the next episode. Like, oh, I didn't know him, and he broke in here. What did you expect me to do? It's a little cliche. I'm really hoping I'm not pointing out a cliche before it happens. But seriously, Jack, I've said this before, Jack could not be more suspicious if his first line in every scene was, "Hi, I'm the secret villain." So I think it's pretty safe to say that he is the uncle in question. And, I'm really hoping not, because it's been suggested in other places that he's a lower level player and somebody else must be higher up, but who else would it be? Oh, wait. There is the possibility that, we're dealing with New York organized crime, so it could be a kingpin. Could be a connection to the Marvel TV shows. Now that I've intrigued myself with that, I actually can't wait to find out. But like I said, this seemed a little bit light on story, even though the episode was the same length. And I think the only reason this episode of me reviewing it is as long as it is because I actually took notes this time. But, I can't wait to see where this next part goes and how much more suspicious Jack can possibly get before it's revealed what his plan is. But honestly, if they're setting us up for a huge bait and switch, I'm not going to feel that bad about it either. But I leave it to you, people. What did you think of this episode, or the ones that came before it? What do you think will happen in the ones after it? Drop a comment below and let me know. Remember to like, share, hopefully subscribe. And until next time, I've been Scott, and this has been an Instant Review, an offshoot of opinions no one cares about. Everyone has opinions. This one was mine.